Hello and welcome to What It Takes from Blue Ridge PBS, where we try to take a broad view of education in the Commonwealth by talking to interesting educators and experts in the region. My guest today is Locke of the Floyd Country Store, County Sales Records, and the Handmade School, all of which are dedicated to promoting the unique culture that surrounds bluegrass and old-time music. And Dylan, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Before we talk about the specific programs that you have there, can we just talk a little bit about kind of what's special about what's been going on in Floyd for all of these years?
Yeah, well, Floyd is a really unique little town. It's a one-stoplight town nestled in the Blue Ridge Plateau, so it's kind of up in elevation and really beautiful. The Blue Ridge Parkway runs right through the county. But what's been happening there for a long time is this sort of tradition of music and dancing and sort of gathering in appreciation of those art forms. And the Floyd Country Store has been sort of at the epicenter of this celebration of music and dance for decades. And it's also been a building that's been sort of the anchor of downtown Floyd for over 100 years. So it's always sort of been the sort of local gathering spot, whether it's been a grocery store or a feed and seed or a farmer's supply, and then ultimately ended up becoming the Floyd Country Store and the home of the Friday Night Jamboree. So,
what's the Friday Night Jamboree?
So the Friday Night Jamboree is a weekly event that happens every Friday, and we just celebrated the 35th anniversary in 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And so 35 years, every Friday night is a gathering, a social gathering, a dance, and old-time music and bluegrass music have been happening there since the early 80s, and really longer than that, but that's when the event sort of became the Friday Night Jamboree, and we sort of marked that time in 1984 when it sort of was proclaimed the Friday Night Jamboree. And so for 36 years now, we've been doing this every Friday night, and people come from all around the world to join in the fun.
That's what always amazes me when we do go to the Floyd Country Store on a Friday night to see license plates from everywhere, sometimes a tour bus from somewhere else. I've seen Japanese tourists there and all of that. So that's a lot of, is there any pressure to sort of maintain what has always been there as?
Well, because it's become sort of a tourist destination, it's important to us that we maintain the integrity of the culture. So there's nothing about what we're doing that is gimmicky or produced to lure people in. This is just simply a gathering of people doing something that they've been doing in the mountains of Virginia for hundreds of years, and that authenticity is what people are looking for. And so no, we keep it as authentic and as simple as possible. People used to play music and dance as soon as they set up their farms here in Virginia, and they've been doing it for hundreds of years, and so that's all we do. And I'm proud to say that the Floyd Country Store is one of the last standing places where people still do that.
It's always been interesting to me as somebody who's not from here originally, Floyd is this confluence of both the old time, people in overalls and doing it the way they've always done it, and then sort of influx in the 70s of counterculture and hippies and whatever. I've always been amazed at how people just kind of get along, and I don't know that would be the case with those two cultures in lots of other places.
Yeah, well, I think they've got unified goals and shared values. They want to live on the land, they want to be left alone, they love music, they like being creative, they care for each other's families. It's simple, I think that's what happens there, and that's why it always worked, is they have the same values, even if they might have differences in politics and they might have differences in other parts of their lives. The majority of their values overlap.
So talk a little bit about your own family history with Floyd, and how did you end up where you are?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Virginia, and came to Southwest Virginia to go to school, and decided, what I wanted to do was play music, and found myself stumbling into a career of producing events. I really found a lot of joy in bringing people together for musical events, concerts, festivals, things like that, where people sort of left their TVs at home and their cell phones once they came along, and came together into a room and enjoyed live music. I also think that people playing music is one of the most fascinating things that humans do. So I've wanted to spend my whole every day, sort of doing that and bringing people to that, drawing people into that world, if I can. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here, and I've done a couple of jobs where I've been able to exercise that, and through those jobs been inspired by different people. And education was something that really became sort of central to the way I think about producing events. I always want to sort of pass along and draw people into an experience so that they gain something from it.
The country store wasn't always kind of a nonprofit. You've got, I don't know if it is now or not. It's not.
No.
Okay. So, but a lot of the other things you are doing are not. It's a business, but you're in the business of helping to promote the culture and those sort of things. And let's go ahead and get specifically into the Handmade Music School.
Yeah.
What is it? Where did you get the idea, and how does it function?
Well, the Handmade Music School is a nonprofit 501c3. Sort of lives as a sister organization to the Floyd Country Store. So it is designed to draw people into the music of our mountains, so that they can experience, the beauty of the music and the dance and the people and the stories and the culture in general. And that lives and is demonstrated beautifully at the Floyd Country Store all the time. And the Floyd Country Store, we like to say that our product is experiences. Yes, we have events, we have great food. We've got really... I
can highly recommend the Brunswick Stew, by the way, that is often on the menu. I don't know if it always is, but I really like it.
Yeah, we've got great food, and we've got interesting and unique products on the shelves. But what we're selling, I think, if we were selling anything, really, it's an experience. And I think that that's what the Handmade Music School can then take that and do its part by bringing people in to teach them all the things we find beautiful about the culture and the history of the Floyd Country Store and the community around the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so we do lessons, private lessons, we do classes, we do workshops, we do camps, and then we do sort of research projects to sort of share more knowledge and wisdom about this music and the dance and the history and the people and what makes it fascinating, and how, and it gives people a sense of place. So then they realize that really Southwest Virginia is also the birthplace of country music and a lot of American music. And even though Bristol sort of snagged that up as the birthplace of country music because they had a really important recording session in 1927, many of the musicians come from Southwest Virginia, and that's what makes up the fabric of early American music, along with New Orleans and Congo Square. So we are a fascinating place because we are a spark of our creative voice in America really comes from this part of the world, this part of the country. And it's fascinating to explore it. In particular now, it's fascinating to explore some of the parts of the history that are not clearly articulated. This music has been extremely whitewashed. Women have not been given credit for their contributions. All that kind of stuff that the Handmade Music School is working on to share with people so that they get a deeper appreciation for what we have.
And so, the idea of mentorship, which we, all educators, mentorship comes around when you talk about education anywhere. Mentorship is kind of built into how people learn traditional old-time bluegrass music, and of course, sitting in at the open mic or the jam sessions at the country store or anywhere else is part of that. But the Handmade Music School, in some ways, sort of formalizes that mentorship relationship. Can you talk about where you find people to teach and where you're finding your students?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question because, I think the way we have set up our school is that we pass along traditions, we hand it down. It's an oral tradition. It's not method books. It's not it's not notation. It's none of that. It's passing it down, and we say knee to knee, phrase by phrase, step by step. So the way that you would have learned in the mountains in Virginia 100 years ago is you would have learned from your parents or your grandparents or your aunts or uncles or your community as a young person, and then you'd grow up and you'd pass it along to your kids. And that's how it happened for generations. And so we take that very seriously. We don't want people to, they can. However, whatever technique works for them to pass it along, since there's YouTube and all these wonderful tools that they didn't have decades ago or hundreds of years ago, those are valuable assets. There's a ton of incredible resources online. But we found a community of musicians that's what they do. They pass it along, they mentor people, they share. And so we're lucky to live in a community where there's a lot of those people around.
Right.
And almost every musician, I started this a few years back where one of the things I always do is ask musicians that are coming to perform if they want to do something else in the community, teach a class, go engage with a part of the community that might benefit from what they have to say. And so we do as much of that as possible, where a performer coming to play at 7:30 at night might host a class in the afternoon, or we might do outreach in the local schools or things like that.
Sure. We talked in a phone conversation the other day about sort of the difference between preserving the culture and promoting the culture and how those two concepts fit together. I'd love for you to share your thoughts on the role of your organizations in preserving versus promoting or shining a light.
Yeah, I feel really strongly that the word preservation implies, I know this isn't completely true, but it implies that something would need to be that it needs to be put into a fluid to keep it alive or something like that. I think about that. So to me, the culture of old time music and bluegrass music and flatfoot dancing and ballad singing and all that is very much alive. Young people are fully engaged in Floyd County and through several other programs, Handmade Music School, Junior Appalachian Musicians, very vibrant young involvement, in this music. There's times on Friday night where I can have a square dance with all kids under 12. We're talking 12, 16 kids out on the dance floor that fully know how to do their own square dance. All taking part in classes, coming out to dances, playing on the street on Fridays. So to me, it's alive, it's vibrant. So in that regard, I don't feel like there's preservation. For me isn't the word. It's more of a celebration and a promotion and an engagement and all of that, but not preservation, with exception of county sales.
I was going to say, you have county sales is kind of one of our topics and good place to jump into it. County sales is a long-time old time music label that was in danger of kind of going to the wind, right? So that is an act of preservation.
That one's an act of preservation.
And how did you Did you just look around and nobody else was going to do it, or how did it become? And talk a little bit about what county sales is, but then what it's becoming.
So county sales and county records and Rebel Records was started by a gentleman named Dave Freeman in New York in 1965. And he drove through this part of this Virginia when he was a kid and noticed that the radio stations that he was picking up in the car would change county to county. And county to county, the sort of music that he was getting was sort of different every county. So he named it County Records, and he moved his family to Virginia, Floyd, in 1973. And so since 1965, but in Floyd County since 1973, county sales has been the world's largest selection of old-time bluegrass, early country music recordings, and has literally served the world by delivering incredible recordings and a lot of field recordings. They were producing their own, where they were going to hotel rooms and getting musicians into these spaces and recording fascinating early Southwest Virginia fiddling styles or clawhammer banjo styles, volume 1, 2, and 3, and just these like very important recordings for the music world that Dave and his team produced, and was very successful for decades until, we got to the place where digital music came along. Streaming has basically made it so that people don't pay for music anymore. And I find that to be a real shame, because I think if there's one thing that makes people's lives better, it's music, and yet we don't give it value. And so that's another educational thing, or a high horse that I get on in my education mentoring with young people, is to explain to them that use the streaming services to find the music you love, and then support the musicians that you love. And county sales is, I was the guy standing there after Dave called it quits after 55 years or 53 years. And I figured I'm doing one of two things. I'm giving it a softer landing and letting it, slowly fade away, slower than when he was done. Or I'm going to figure out a way to engage the old-time bluegrass, early country music lovers in a way that we can still bring this music to the world. And specifically, the ideas I've got are about education and sharing recordings that are becoming out of print and obsolete. The Smithsonian Folkways does this type of work where if you want something that Smithsonian Folkways has produced, you can always get it no matter what. And if you want the CD with the liner notes, you can get it. And I think that we've converted county sales under the nonprofit umbrella of Handmade Music School. So in the future, next couple of years, you'll see county sales sort of represent itself as more of a old-time bluegrass museum of recorded history and archival recordings, and you'll see us produce new recordings of out of print and hard to find, or maybe never released material that is still relevant. And we're going to be doing field recording, because that shouldn't stop. Because in 50 years or 100 years, we're going to want to hear someone talking about what the music meant in 2021. When, right now we're like, oh, isn't that cool? 1971, cool, what were they doing, Oh, they were in a hot building recording this music. It's fascinating, right? In 50 years, we're going to care about what's happening today. And if it's all studio recordings, it lays a little flat as far as context. And Sure.
Hearing it on the porch is different. One of the things I'm trying to talk to almost everyone who sits in that chair is, if you're involved in education, the arrival of COVID was, fairly cataclysmic, at least at first. You talk about a learning mentorship program where it's knee to knee. We're now 6 feet apart, and you could do that. but people can't come into the same space. It's harder to do. How has that impacted everything that you do, and how did you kind of adapt immediately, and then, how's that changing the way you do things now?
Well, it actually was
it was never a good thing.
It was never a good
You don't have to say
thing.
it was a good thing, right?
It was never a good thing, but it did allow us to sort of rethink the way we were doing things. And I mentioned before that on a Friday night at the Floyd Country Store, if I say who's here for the first time, it's 100 people at least in the room that are here for the first time. The last 7 years of my life, every Friday night before COVID hit, 100 people are here in Floyd for the first time. And they are also from all around the world. I give away a hat to the farthest away every Friday night, and it's almost never the US, it's always overseas. And so when we were hit with not being able to gather in person, we went online. So we started producing live streams, we started producing a series called Handmade at Home, which was virtual learning experiences. And so it went both ways. We were reaching out to our community that couldn't come to us. We were supporting the musicians who couldn't work and travel. And we made it a pay what you want scenario. So it was a minimum of $5, as much as $100. So if you were a musician that was sitting at home and wanted to learn from one of your peers how to play fiddle better or banjo better, then you could get in for $5 and enjoy that online workshop. And other people were like so happy that they were paying $40 and $50. So it worked out to where we paid the musicians for doing this work. They made money at home. And people from the UK and Australia and all around the world were saying, thank you. Like Southwest Virginia is a style of music making we want to learn, and you've brought it to us. Don't quit doing this when the pandemic's over.
In some ways, that idea of you pay what you can probably harkens back to the very early days of what's gone on. Pay a chicken, give some money, whatever you've got to make it.
We've found, I mean, it's made us scratch our heads on how we move forward with everything, because I think people in there, are really generous to experiences that are meaningful to them. I think they want to make sure they continue. I think that they want to support them in any way that they can. And sometimes when you set up a really, a pay wall that is like, do this or you can't get it, I think that sometimes is unfortunate, and you're not reaching everyone that should be reached by what you're doing. And so we're constantly thinking about that. There's a Share the Music program. The Floyd Country Store has a pay it forward lunch program. Mm-hmm. So you could buy $50 worth of meal tickets that if someone walks in and needs a meal, then we just can offer them a meal. We don't ask any questions. And we've started the same program with Handmade Music School called Share the Music. And so you can make a contribution, which means when someone asks for a free lesson or a free workshop, I simply say yes.
It's already covered.
Yeah.
Right. That's
and it's
great.
A beautiful thing.
We've got a little more than a minute left. You're on the Crooked Road. The Crooked Road is an important kind of tourism and cultural organization in the state.
Yeah.
I know that not everyone along the Crooked Road is some of them had a lot of difficulty with COVID. In the brief time we have left, can you kind of talk about your place on the Crooked Road and
Yeah, the Crooked Road's a beautiful thing. It's a great organization that's done a lot of good for Southwest Virginia. It's a 300-mile stretch of road that is a crooked road, and it's sort of dotted along the journey is 9 major venues, and Floyd has 2 of them with Floyd Country Store and County Sales. And it really celebrates heritage music of Southwest Virginia. It really celebrates that. It sort of gives it the wind behind its sails. It supports musicians, and we're happy to be a part of it and happy to support them, and they support us. And we recommend that people take that trip down the Crooked Road and check out all this music and great people.
Keep on going and seeing what else is there.
Absolutely.
And how Floyd fits into that.
Yep.
we could talk a lot longer, but as we close the program, I would like to thank Dylan Locke of the Floyd Country Store, County Sales Records, and the Handmade Music School for sharing his story with us today. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.
Thank you.
Yeah.